So I'm Nahum. As you can imagine, this is biblical name, not quite American one. So I'm Israeli, but I'm Israeli with a strange history. I mean, I was born in Russian Georgia, so my original name is Nahum. I immigrated to Israel when I was 15, and actually now I live in Poland. So I end up being like living in 3 countries, right? And now traveling from time to time to US. Just to give you some background, I'm coming from software engineering background, so I started in Israeli army as many of Israelis in tech field. I was building web and intranet applications for probably a good 8 years. I then moved to pre-sales, and this is where I was exposed to QA. Around 2006, I started to being involved in QA tools. So I was selling some tools, helping some companies to set it up. And I was always amazed to see what the big gap is between QA and development, right? I was fortunate enough to be involved in a number of large QA setups in different companies. And back about 4 years ago, I realized that there is quite a severe problem in QA field. That on one side, all the development is getting more and more automated, like DevOps process, CI/CD. On the other side, QA is still mostly manual. I think statistics say somewhere between 80 to 90% are still manual. And so I took a couple of my good friends, and we realized that there must be a better way to do it. And we want definitely to help to QA to close this gap between QA and development. And so this is when we started Cloudbit. So Cloudbit is a startup company, which again grew out of a few people who went long enough in QA field, felt on themselves all the pain, and realized that there must be something that we can do about it, right? Okay, so I want to set a context for our meeting today. I want to keep it as an open conversation. We are, good amount enough to be more like, chatting about it, rather than just do it one way, okay? So feel free, whenever you have questions, just raise your hand or get into discussion. So I want just to set a context. So basically, as I mentioned, I'm from Cloudbit. Our aim is to help QA to bridge the gap with the development in terms of all CI/CD and continuous testing and DevOps. And we help companies to bring the QA teams up to speed. So the world we're living today is what we call agile or DevOps. Basically, agile release cycle means that you usually would release you will release software every 2 weeks, sometimes faster, but usually it's 2-week cycle. So on one side, from business perspective, so we deploy software very often, right? So our customers constantly get updates. We can quickly fix some things that we found in production. So the speed is a key here, right? So if you want to be competitive in today's market, you need to release software fast, right? Even banks today, which are usually quite slow, many of them, they already have agile process in place, and they do release their software usually on a 2-weekly basis. On the other side, the testing part is still mostly manual, right? So if we have large enough system, testing it on agile basis is very difficult and very challenging and very time consuming, right? So manual testing is still a nightmare, right? Especially if you are in mobile space, then it's a real nightmare, okay? Because you have literally no chance to test your application of tens or 100 different device models, even if you have them, okay? I think, many of us thinking how we can actually streamline testing, right? How we can make our testing faster, okay? So, and mobile space, just to give you some more information on mobile space challenges. So we have 2 operating systems, but they are so much different, right? We have end-to-end tests. So we might have hybrid app, we might have native app, so we test them differently. We might have a responsive website and so on and so forth. So there are many, many challenges out there. Another problem that we have today is that, we originally, manual QA was mostly focused on UI testing, right? Because it's when we need to test application manually, we usually have a user interface. We don't have access to kind of, all the mechanisms, and, before we were almost not testing the API, which is today more popular. So the UI was more or less the only interface with the application. So today, if we go deeper to test automation, so we suddenly have much more options to test. And there's so much important to test the whole integration process and make sure that whatever you do on your screen is reflected in your backend system. So we have much, much more options to do today. And so it's important to pay attention whenever you test. Make sure you don't just test UI, you test more things, okay? And we will discuss it later on today. So today, automation tool give us many of these tools give us access also to testing like API testing, database testing, and so on. Okay, so we said that manual testing is time consuming and it's challenging, especially in DevOps era. So let's see what options we have, right? What we can do to streamline it. So I think many of you, or probably all of you, heard about Selenium Appium. Anyone who knows about Selenium and Appium? Okay, cool. So Selenium and Appium, I think, two most popular open source test automation projects or frameworks that you have, right? So the first one was Selenium, I think 2000, probably 3 or 4. The idea was simple, to allow developers to write unit tests for end-to-end, like end-to-end unit tests, right? So it's a great project, but the problem with Selenium is that it's oriented on developers. It was originally built having developers' mindset, okay? So in order for us to create a proper test in Selenium, we need to write a lot of code. The good thing is that you can write your test code with Selenium on any programming language, right? So you can, if you work with Java, you can do it with Java. If you work with C#, or anything else, right? So those are good news. Bad news are that you need a lot of technical knowledge to do it. So you need to be a programmer, okay? You need to know a lot of details which are not directly related to the application you want to test. So it's quite a big overhead working with Selenium and Appium, okay? So the market likes these tools. Most of, I think, today, large companies like Facebook, LinkedIn implementing these tools. On other side, still, I mean, for us as QA engineers, many times this is not exactly what we need because there is a technical gap between what we do on day-to-day basis and what this tool requires, right? Oops. Okay. So say you want to take Selenium and Appium and you want to build your tests, right? So you can't just take these tools. You need to build a framework around it, okay? Why we need a framework? Because when we want to test, we need more things than just clicking a button or clicking an element, okay? We usually need to integrate test data in our test, right? We want to read some data from files and we need to be able to run different test cycles on different data. Okay, we want to add some validation points, right? We want to see a nice report. Okay, we want to send it to email or to any other place, and so on and so forth. So there are some additional features we need to build on top of our Selenium and Appium tests to be really usable for us as QA, right? So this is why we need to build a framework, and this is why many organizations spend somewhere between 3 to 6 months when they just start with Selenium to build just a framework before they write even a single test, okay? Which is a lot of time and a lot of effort. So we in Cloudbit saw there must be a better way, right? Because it seems like every organization reinventing the wheel. So eventually everyone wants to have just a proper testing framework, but many organizations are just writing it from scratch, okay? So we saw it might be a better way. And so we basically sat and we said, hey, what we want to do about it. And we said we want basically to create an open source project which helps QA engineers to get into test automation, okay? And we called it Oxygen. So I'm delighted to present you today our open source project, Oxygen. Just to give you a few highlights what Oxygen does. So first of all, Oxygen is based on Node.js, okay? Node.js is a kind of extension of JavaScript. So it allows you to write much more advanced JavaScript code than just with the original one. Why we choose JavaScript? Because we think JavaScript is one of the simplest programming language exists today. Okay, you don't need to compile it. You don't need to know small, things like classes and so on. You can just simply open any text editing tool, and you just write it, and within one command line saying you can run it. Okay, so it's very, very simple to get started with JavaScript. So this is why we choose JavaScript on one side. On the other side, we wanted the test to be able to run and write tests for people who are not very technical. Okay, and so we thought about what we call KDT approach. KDT is key-driven testing. Okay. So with KDT, the idea with KDT is simple, that you create a keyword for you that you know, okay? And you just use these keywords for your test, right? So for example, you want to test, I don't know, ice cream machine, right? So you create yourself a keyword. So you create a machine keyword, and then you say, I can put some milk in it, and so on. So you create basically a language which you understand, okay? And so the same approach driven us in Oxygen. So we said we will create something which is very easy for people to understand, like readable text almost, okay? They can understand without knowing how to write code. So we call it low-code approach, okay? So Oxygen brings low-code approach to test automation on one side. On the other side, sometimes we do need to get our hands more dirty into code, especially if we want to create more integration tests. So we want to combine end-to-end testing with some API, with some database and stuff like this, then we usually would like to use some coding, right? So we didn't want to limit the tool just to be a simple recurrent play mechanism for test automation. We wanted both more beginners and more advanced users to use it, right? So this is why also it's, we can utilize Node.js, which has endless capabilities for developers and testers. So we call it combination of simplicity and power. Okay, so simplicity on one side, so you don't need to write some complex code just to get the basic automation. Power on the other side, if you're an advanced user and want to do crazy things, or integrate different things and so on, you can do it easily. So this one thing. Another thing is dedicated IDE. So, many development environments, like Eclipse, for example, they're usually overkill for QA. We don't need all this functionality, right? So at the end of the day, we just want to record some tests. We need to be able to edit it based on what we see on the screen, and we want to be able to run it, okay? So our requirements as QA are a little bit different from typical developer requirements from development environment, right? So we created our own development environment to help QA engineers to work more closely with features like recording and playback of tests that they need, rather than trying to adapt developer-oriented environment to testing. Now this is optional. So Oxygen is both framework and IDE. So if you like to use your own IDE, like for example Visual Studio Code, you can do it. So you don't have to use our Oxygen IDE, but it's a good option to have. Okay, and I will show you what capabilities it has. Okay. Another thing, we implemented industry best practices like page objects, like data-driven testing, and so on. So you can find it all in this framework, right? So it can almost guide you what is the right way to write tests, okay? Especially if you don't have experience, but if you do, you will find many things you were doing before in other frameworks, you will find it here. As I mentioned already, so it's not just about end-to-end testing. End-to-end testing is important, but today testing pyramid has flipped. So organizations do more and more API testing, integration testing, component testing, and so on. So it was very important for us to be able, in one test script, to combine different levels of tests, to combine API testing, UI testing, maybe some integration testing, and so on. And so Oxygen allows you to test different things. It has about 7 or 8 models, different models. I will show it to you today. So a lot of choice. Another thing is parallel testing and no setup testing. So today, especially if you are mobile space, it's very important to run your test on as many devices as possible, okay? Because different screen resolution, different hardware specs, and so on and so forth. And actually today, if you just take a Java or C#, you need to work hard to be able to create this kind of parallel testing, synchronization, and so on. So all this is built in Oxygen, okay? So in simple configuration file, you just can run parallel tests very easily. And of course, advanced results. We all want to be able to see why the test has failed, where it failed, and be able to send our managers some nice report, right? So all this you can do with Oxygen. Oxygen supports, I think, 4 types of reports. So we, of course, generate HTML report, we generate JUnit XML report, we generate Excel report, and we generate JSON report, okay? So there are different type of report, depends how you want to use it. Also, Oxygen is integrated with leading CI tools. We recently released Orb for Circle CI. You can obviously also use it from any other CI tool like Jenkins and so on. Very easy to do it. We have our CLI extension, so you can just, using NPM, you can install your Oxygen CLI and be able to run it from any place on your computer. Okay, so just to summarize Oxygen advantages, so it's open source and free. You can create tests with recording if you wish. I personally think it's a great way to start testing, and especially if you have a website which quite easily can be recorded. It's Node.js powered, so you can go as far as you like in terms of your test on one side. On the other side, it's still low code, which means it's really simple to get started with Oxygen. You don't need any coding skills. Very simple debugging and playback, so very handy for UI tests. You can run it on any infrastructure, and this is also a very powerful thing. So first of all, you can create your test on your local machine, which is the fastest way to do it. Okay, so you always can see on your browser or your mobile device what's going on, and the feedback is very quick. On the other side, when you want to run the real test, you can use any infrastructure you like. It's all Selenium and Appium based. So you can use, for example, South Labs, our great host here, infrastructure to run the test, or any other providers, or you can put your own Selenium grid. So it's very, very flexible. Okay, so you have many options to run the test. Again, this is not proprietary technology, right? So it's just a wrap around Selenium and Appium. We call it Selenium and Appium on pillows, okay, because it helps you basically to overcome the basic issues with Selenium and Appium. So parallel testing we said, and many different test types in one tool. API testing, DB testing, mail testing, and so on and so forth. Okie dokie. So how we get started? So Oxygen has its own website. Very easy to start. Or not. Okay. So all you need to do, you go to OxygenHQ.org. Okay, you can just download the tool. Okay, the tool is compatible with all operating systems, so you can pick one relevant to you. So you can just download it. We have great documentation here for both web and mobile, so you can see how to get started with either web or mobile. We have some video tutorials, we have some textual tutorials, so you can find the right way for you to start. Okay, so we won't talking about Android at the moment. Maybe we might talk about it later. So in terms of recording, we have two options recording tests. So we have built-in recording capability in web. Okay, so when you install Oxygen, you get your Chrome extension installed next to Oxygen IDE. And so once you accept just to activate it, you can record, I will show you in a moment, you can very easily record web tests. If we speak about mobile, so we have a special plugin to Appium Desktop. Okay, so you can download a special version of Appium Desktop from our website. And when you do it, you have here Let me show you. Yeah, I don't know if you see it. Basically, we have here an option to generate Oxygen code. So this way you can record mobile tests. Okay. We also work to add native mobile recording inside our IDE. So we believe this feature will be out in the next month's time. So this is options for you to record the test. Oxygen has about 20 different commands in the web and mob module. So just to show you quickly about models. Just a second. Okay. So you can see we have different models here. Okay. So web and mobile. So web is Selenium wrapper. Mob is Appium one. Okay. So those would be probably two most popular models. We have few other models. So we have DB model. We have date model. So you can manipulate with the date. We have special SOAP model, logging, different assertions, HTTP, which is your gateway to API testing. We have even serial port gateway, so you can connect your IoT devices. And you can combine end-to-end testing in mobile, for example, some API testing and IoT testing, okay? Which is amazing. So we have a serial port, we have a mailinator extension, so you can actually combine your mail test, either in terms of OTP, if your application sends code, authentication code to email, so you can just take this code and integrate in your UI test, or just to validate that, for example, notification email has been received. So it's up to you. We work with Mailinator service. We have great integration with Twilio. Okay, who knows Twilio? Okay, so basically the Twilio is a service. It's kind of virtual telephone service. So basically you can get your number, and you can receive SMSs. You can receive calls, send SMSs, and so on. So why we integrated with Twilio is because in mobile space, you know, especially today, you have a lot of SMS or messaging traffic, right? So SMSs are used for OTP, for authentication, right? Two-way authentication. Notifications are also sent many times to SMS and so on. So SMS is today a very important part of our testing, right? On the other side, reading SMSs on mobile devices is quite a challenge. I don't know if those of you who tried it. So what we did, we added Twilio extension to be able to just create a virtual number, send SMSs to this virtual number instead of device, and being able to interact with this number. So all those things you can do with Twilio module, and we have just general email model. Okay, so if you are not using Mailinator service, which I really recommend you to, you can just use your regular email and just again to get authentication code to validate that you get some information and so on and so forth. We have two new models coming. We have ApplyTools model coming. I know, have you heard about ApplyTools? Anyone? We have next month coming ApplyTools model, which allows you to do some visual testing, and also shell model, so you can run shell commands. Okay, so because part of our testing can involve some shell, right? We might want, even on terms of setup, we might want just to create a Docker for our test, right? So all this we can do in shell. So all this coming next month. Okay, so let's see a basic commands that will be the same for web and mobile. So we have an init command. So this is really initializing WebDriver. Okay, so we will typically give a capabilities inside the initialize command. So capabilities would be in web, it would be probably a browser name, okay, which means which browser we want to test. For mobile, there will be a little bit more capabilities. Usually we say which application we want to test on which device and so on. We have, of course, click command, we have pause command. Now, so we have different type of pauses. So we have implicit wait, explicit wait. If you like, I can talk about it later. Just let me know. Okay, and we have, of course, we can type text, we do assertions, we have 5 or 6 types of assertions, so on. So you have really everything you need to just create automation tests and then validations. Okie dokie. Okay, so I will speak about Appium a bit later. I want to show you, I want to do now a quick demo, okay? I want to show you how we open Oxygen ID and how we can record some tests, okay? We will do then a Q&A session, and I will then show you how we can do mobile testing, okay? So this is Oxygen ID. Let's just quickly look at it. So basically what we have here, so we have here file tree, okay? So you can open, very similar to Visual Studio Code, those of you who work with it. So we have a file tree, so we can open a directory here, and we can see all the files there. So there is no particular structure we enforce. You can use any file structure you like, okay? Basically, Oxygen scripts are JS files. It's just a regular JavaScript file with JavaScript extensions, that's all. So you can place them whatever structure you like. So you see here files, so you can open any JavaScript file, and you can see them here. So you have here text editor, and this is a code. We will generate it in a moment, but this is a code that's generated by Oxygen. It might look scary at the beginning, but actually if you just read it, you see it's very human readable, okay? So we see a simple code which goes web open, so it just opens a page, right? So if you just examine this code, you see there is no, you don't feel it's JavaScript, right? Those of you who write JavaScript, they usually used to see require statements, import statements, and so on. So in this code, you don't see it, okay? Because we have a special wrapper around JavaScript, okay? So this is really kind of KDT code, which you can utilize to write your tests. So, and we have, of course, logging here. Now pay attention that we automatically start Selenium server, okay? So you don't need to do it manually. If you do mobile tests, then you do need to start manually Appium server, okay? So pay attention. Selenium server is built in. Appium server you need to start, okay? What else we have here? So at the top, we have a toolbar, okay? So we have 3 different modes. So we have a web mode, okay? So if I just go back to a web mode, so I basically can run my test instantly on 3 browsers I have here. So very simple. I have a mobile mode. So if I have any mobile device connected, so I can just sit here and I can pick it up. Yeah. We have, sorry, IE? Yeah, if you will run on Windows, then it will have IE as well, yeah. And the last one is responsive mode, very useful. So if you have a responsive web application, then you can actually test here without a need to connect device or run into an emulator. You can test how it will look here on different resolutions. So you can choose any device here, as you can see. Okay, and you can just run kind of virtual on this device. It's not real device, it's just adaptation of resolution, but it will give you the responsive part of your app, okay? So there are 3 different modes. We have recording mode, of course, I will show in a moment, and we have a delay here. Now the delay here in seconds is just artificial delay to allow you to see more slowly how your test is running, okay? Oxygen is damn fast. So once you just run your test here, it will be like, it will be flying in front of your eyes, right? So if you want to debug your test, you have 2 options here. You can either add just delay between steps, artificial delay, or you can put a breakpoint. So it's up to you, or both, okay? But anyway, it's much easier here to see it than if you would do it in a regular, say, Visual Studio, okay? Okay, so those are the parts. So I will create a new file. Okay, so I just go here, I do a new file. I don't know, let's call it oxdocs. Okay. And you see that I can just now press recording button. Okay. I have here in my browser. As you can see, I have Oxygen extension here. It's automatically installed as a part of Oxygen installation. And so all I need to do, I can open a new tab or just have an existing tab and I can record it, right? So if I refresh my page, I can see now my page is recorded, okay? So you can do any scenario you like. So for example, we can click through here, some links, okay? And we can try maybe to search something, okay? Okay, nothing found. Cool. So we have some basic script here, okay? And now, let's see what it means. So I can now pause my recording, okay? So now even if I will return to my browser, nothing will be recorded. And now for a moment, let's analyze our script. Okay, so we have a web.init part, which is initializing a WebDriver. So pay attention that there are no capabilities here. So those of you who are familiar with Selenium, usually it's supposed to be capabilities here. So we inject capabilities automatically, okay? You can specify them if you like, but the beauty of Oxygen is that you can inject things automatically from different directions, right? So what we do, we inject, based on your selections here, we would inject the right capabilities, okay? Whether it's web or mobile, okay? So this is the one thing. Another thing, you see web open, okay? So just an opening a page. Now the interesting things start here, right? So you see some comments here, right? Who knows what is this? Those are locators, okay? So basically, both Selenium and Appium, they both work on locators. Locators are basically some kind of identification of element on the screen, okay? And in Selenium and Appium, we can identify element by different types. So we can identify element by ID. So if element has a clear ID, then we can easily identify it. This would be probably the best way to do it. Unfortunately, developers usually are lazy in terms of adding IDs. So they won't add ID for us specially, right? So many times we end up being testing application which has either no IDs or some IDs. And then we need to work harder, okay? So there are a number of other things we can identify. So we can identify elements by CSS, okay, by style element. We can identify elements by XPath. Okay, so XPath is the most flexible way to identify elements, but it's also the most complex one. Okay, like locator parts, is it something, guys, you want me to talk more about it, or is it something you guys know? Yeah.
I would be curious, like how intelligent are some of these other selectors? Like in the case of the CSS one, where it's using nth child, is there any logic to
yes.
try and avoid nth child if you can?
Good point. Good point. Right. So our recording engine has a kind of priority list. Okay. So it's smart enough to say, hey, let's try to pick the best locator, right? And so we have a list of what's best locator is. So best locator is usually the one with ID. This is the best locator. We call it strongest locator or strong locator, okay? So it's first try to find the strong locator, okay? If it does, perfect, we'll put it first, okay? So you will typically have a strong locator already recorded within the step, okay? If it can't find a strong locator, it would typically go to CSS, okay? And trying to kind of bring a unique CSS selection, okay? If it can do it, again, it will be automatically recorded and will find itself in the script itself, okay? And then the last option is to create an XPath. Another option is to create a link, okay, text link, so based on the text element. So if we have a link, for example, I think we will have it here. You see link? So we would typically take a text of a link, okay? Even so, again, it depends. Some people will say XPath is stronger. Some people would say text. Depends. Okay. I think definitely more readable is a text in terms of readable. Anyway, so there are certain like priorities. You know, certain weight for each locator, and so our engine automatically weights each locator and then puts your list here. Okay, based on priority. So what you can do, if this locator doesn't work, you can just copy paste this one here. That said, we're now working on a feature which will just automatically put it all in one smart page object. We call it smart page objects, okay? So I'm happy to, you know, if you drop me a message, I'm happy to show you next month a better version of this. So the idea of smart page object is that we just have it all in back, kind of behind the scenes, so you don't see it. And we automatically, at runtime, we can try different locators, okay? Yeah?
If the locators change, do you automatically fix it?
Sorry?
If the locators change.
Yeah. So this, yeah, in smart locators, yeah. So in smart locators, there will be mechanism which works at runtime, Okay? So whenever you run the test, so we will evaluate each locator based on the priority. If it doesn't work, we'll try the next one. Okay? Anyway, so at the moment it's manual, but it still gives you a hint what possible locators are. So this can save you a lot of time with dev tools. Okay? Working with Chrome dev tools and trying to find different locators. And we're always trying to find the shortest locator. It's not always possible, but we're trying to make it also more readable. Okay? So this is about locators. As you see, we automatically identify windows. So if you work across different tabs or your application opens a new window, then we identify it. Also, we identify different frames. So if your application is still using iframes or regular frames, so we would identify it, and then we will add select window, select frame, and so on. Okay? So again, this is quite smart recording engine, battle tested. You know, we get on monthly basis a lot of feedback about our recording engine. We work very closely with the community, and we improve it all the time. Okay? So I also encourage you guys, when you try it at home, if you see something is not recorded or some recording doesn't work as supposed, so just approach us. We have a forum on our website. You can just write it down there. Okay? Cool. So you see different code here. Okay? So now what I can do, I can just run it simply by pressing run. So let's start with a web. Oh, I need to save it. Right. Cool. Okay, so you see our Chrome browser is now open, and we start to run the test. Okay? So you see zero setup. You don't need to start Selenium server or do anything. It's all built in. Okay? So we just start to do it. Now, if you will look at the tool itself, you can see, okay, I don't know if you managed to see, but there was a small arrow which shows you where you are. Okay, so you can see where you are at the moment. As I mentioned, you can put a breakpoint, and you can stop here. And also, if you have a failure, you will see that failure shows you which line you have a failure, and you will see a message here in general. You will see a message here if you have an error, or if your test has passed, then you will have passed. Okay. So we have, you know, quite advanced recording engine. We have a good logging, so we identify different error types and we aggregate them by we have our own error types, right? So we have like Selenium errors, we have Appium errors, we're trying to process some errors, we try to aggregate some errors, and so on. Few nice things about Oxygen. So Oxygen has automatic fallback mechanism for if you know stale element, okay? So basically stale element is a situation when we're trying to click some element, but it actually either hidden or there is something invisible which we don't see, but from HTML perspective, which covers the element, right? And this is quite often, especially if we are in Angular or React applications, so these things happen quite often with a stale element. So we have a special treatment for it. So we have two types of clicks. We have regular click and we have what we call click hidden, okay? The click hidden always works, okay? What we have, so you can either just use straight click hidden. It's not recommended approach by Selenium because from Selenium perspective, the element should be visible for you to click. But what we have also fallback mechanism. So if you use regular click and you try to click element and it gets stale element, so then we don't throw error, we just behind the scenes try to apply click hidden for you, okay? And you can control it, you can turn it on or turn it off, but basically we have certain things to help you with test flakiness, to reduce test flakiness, especially on basic things like stale element and so on, okay? So this is just to quickly show you. Here I can show you in documentation. So you can see explanation on locators, quite detailed. You have different methods here, okay? We have some special treatment, as I said. You can make element visible if you like, if you want more just to hack things around. This is auto-wait mechanism. We have auto-wait mechanism which trying to wait for element to be visible before you can do action. And again, so if you try to click on element and it's not visible, we would typically try to wait for it for a while. Okay, so this is kind of automatic auto-recovery mechanism here exists. In mobile module, it's even more interesting. So in mobile module, basically you have different things. So one of nice hacks is if you need to test your app in offline mode. So we have enable and disable network, which is not built in functionality in Appium, and we have added. We have read SMS functionality, which is also very nice, can save you a lot of time. We have scrolling functionality, so many times your element is below the fold, which means it's not visible and you need to scroll to it. And usually you don't know how much you need to scroll. This is a big problem, right? So we have automatic mechanism which you just say which element you want to click or do things with it, and we can scroll it in your active view automatically, okay? So there are many, many things like this. You see SMS click link, right? So many times we get some link in SMS and we need to open it. So on and so forth. So there are many, many small things which if you are very actively testing your app, you would know that there are, that you hit the wall in these things, right? Like reading SMSs, like switching on and off Wi-Fi, and so on and so forth. So again, it's a lot of tears that we and a lot of effort we invested here to build this thing, but it's all based on things we saw for last probably 4 years in different organizations, how they try to build their test automation, challenges they were facing, and solutions we together did to overcome these problems, okay? So a lot of effort invested here. Again, you have more modules here. If you like, just tell me, I can show you more modules. Again, nice thing here, again, is that it's all open source. And I want to show you how easily you can actually add your modules. So if we go for one moment to GitHub, okay? So if we go just to GitHub, okay. And I will go to Oxygen node. Sorry. So this is our repository. So if you feel you want to see more behind the scenes how it works, I think I do encourage you to do it because you can see how common things, what are common practices in handling different things in Selenium and Appium. So for example, I can show you that all our models are sitting under one folder, OX models. You see all these models, right? And actually, it's very easy for you to add your own model. Very easy. So for example, if I take Twilio model, right? So you just can see this code, okay? You can see the code. It's well documented. And if you need to extend Oxygen, all you need to do is create your own model and just drop in this folder. That's all. Oxygen will automatically discover your new model, and it will be accessible from your application. So you can either create models for your organization, okay, if you have some special requirements, or particular for your application. And of course, we encourage you guys to contribute, okay? So if you feel you want to add something to Oxygen, something missing, or extend our models. So it's very easy to do. They're all in one folder. Sure.
I have a question. I'm particularly interested in IVR automation.
Okay.
And since you have an extension of the
Twilio?
can you tell me more about that?
Sure. So basically,
Question?
sorry?
Repeat the question.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So the question was that, what's your name? Marina. Marina was asking that she's more in IVR space. IVR means telephony, right? So calls, so on. So she was asking, how our Twilio model can help her to better test, your IVR application. So basically, Twilio has a great capability. Okay, so it's more they than us, which we expose here. So you can do different things. So basically, you can place the calls, but we don't deal with the voice quality, okay? So you can place the calls. At the moment, our model mainly focuses on SMS. So you can read SMS, you can send SMS. This is basically two more important things that we do from mobile testing perspective. Okay, but that said, you can you can place calls, and if you advance enough, actually you can run some tools which can compare your voice calls. Right. So what you can do, so you can place a call. You can play some file, for example. Maybe you can put some echo service behind scenes. You can record whatever is coming back, the voice. And there are external tools which you can just compare to files. Okay? Again, you will need to do some programming stuff here, so it's not out of box. But you can definitely use Oxygen as a facilitator, for example, for reporting, because we have very advanced like assertion mechanisms, so you can do all the stuff, and you can use our assertion to actually compare the results and report the failure or success. Okay? No problem. More questions so far? Cool. So this is about just basics of Oxygen. Oxygen has much more. I will show a bit around. So we can use data-driven testing here, so we can connect our Excel file, and then we can write different, we can inject different data to our test very easily. We can also decide if we want to open every iteration, if we want to open a new Selenium session or reuse the existing Selenium session. Okay, and I promised you the responsive mode, right? So we can now run the same test in responsive mode just by switching the modes, that's all. Okay, we will see now the browser will be open just with a smaller window. You see this is a responsive mode now, right? Okay. Now see what will happen. The test will fail here. Who knows why? This was a link in left side content menu. The reason why the test will fail is because in responsive mode, we don't have this section, left side section, right? So just my tip to you is pay attention when you do a responsive test, which also needs to work for full desktop. Make sure you know which elements appear or disappear in different modes and handle it properly in your test. Okay? So we'll see it now, it's 60 seconds timeout, you will see the failure and you will see the message here. Okay, so we see element not found on line 14 and fail status. Okay, now so Oxygen ID again, it's very simple. Okay, so very easily to create, test, and debug it, but this is not runtime environment. Okay, I mean you can run your test, right, but you don't have any reporting here. So in order to run your test with reports, so you would typically use a command line tool. Okay. So you can install Oxygen globally. Okay, so if I write Oxygen here, okay, so it's installed globally. How you do it? You just use npm. So npm is Node.js package manager. Okay, you have very detailed instruction on our website how to do it, so you can just check it out there. So once you just create a simple command npm install Oxygen, Oxygen CLI. And so it will be installed globally. And you have a few options here. So the basic usage is very simple. So the basic usage would be just to write Oxygen, space, and just take your test file and run it. So I can take any test here. Yeah, we can take the Wikipedia one. Okay. And I can just simply start running it, okay? The only thing here is that I will need, yeah, I have a data file here, one moment. Okay, so you see now the same test is running inside from the command line tool, right? So this is a way you would typically run the final test, okay? Pay attention that if you want to generate HTML report on Mac, you will need Mono, because our reporting engine is based on .NET Core technology. So you will have a Mono project on Mac, and of course you don't need, usually .NET is coming on Windows, so you don't need this one. But if you look at the Oxygen help file, you can see that we have more reporting options, okay? So you can run with different reports. You see you have, this is a different reports type, so I can generate, for example, XML file or JUnit XML file, so I can just do it --rf equals, and for example, I can put here XML, right? And I can run the same test and it will generate XML output. Okay, so you have different reporting models, and actually the nice part is that you can add your model very easily. So it, again, our reporting models are in our GitHub repository. Okay, so if you go here with Oxygen, you go to lib, and with reporters, you can see all different reporter types. It's very easy, just drop your file here. It's fairly simple code, so you can add your own reporting. For example, you can report to Elasticsearch or any other things or any database and so on. Again, very modular, very simple, okay? More things you can do with CLI tool, so you can run test suits, okay? You can create your JSON file where you put a list of test suits and you can run them all together. The same goes with running on different infrastructure. For example, you want to run with South Labs, okay? So you can very easily just put South Labs Selenium Grid API and South Labs credential in this JSON file, and within one click you can run it. The nice thing is that South Labs supports parallel testing, okay? And we support parallel testing. So all you need to do is just to put in your configuration file what size of parallel testing you need. So how many tests you want to run in parallel. That's all. So South Labs will take care of parallel testing on their side, and Oxygen will take it here on Oxygen side, right? So very easy to do it, okay? So this is another thing to pay attention to. What else? So as I said, running from Jenkins or any other tool, very simple. Again, you just run it, and you ask to generate JUnit XML file. You do it simply by mentioning rf JUnit. Okay, and then we'll generate JUnit XML file. Okay, again, very simple. And one more cool thing, which we recently added, you can do load testing with Oxygen. Okay, now, why you would say you would do load testing with UI test tool, right? The answer is that many times load testing, like starting load testing when you have already scripts, Selenium scripts is much easier. Those of you who try to create proper load test scripts with JMeter knows that many times it's a nightmare. Okay, it's very not straightforward process, right? You work on low level, usually HTTP traffic with a lot of different parameters, okay? And sometimes it takes you weeks to create a simple script, okay? So the plus of using Oxygen with load testing is that you have already a script, so you don't need to do any effort, okay? B is that Oxygen already supports parallel tests, so if you get strong enough machine, you can do even hundreds of users, okay? And especially that there are more and more providers like South Labs who provide parallel testing, so you can probably utilize their infrastructure, or what we do sometimes, we help our clients just to set up their own Selenium grid, which is ready for load test, okay? So you have many options there. That said, if you need to get hundreds of thousand users, then probably testing it through Selenium is not the best idea, okay? But as initial stage, just to load test basic load test your application, especially if you just want to see regression, you know, how your performance is doing in CI/CD process, this could be a great tool for you, okay? So a lot to see there. How much time we have?
Well, I want to leave time for people to network with you after.
Right, this is why I'm asking, okay? So I'm almost done. A few minutes, which I want also to talk about Cloudbit, just to mention it. So basically, Cloudbit is another product we have. It's not open source, but it's free for testers. We have very good free tier. And I want just to show you quickly. Now, because I'm from Israel, I will just show you some gibberish Hebrew here. Okay? But anyway, so the idea of Cloudbit is that you can bring all your test automation to one central place. Okay? Why would you do it? Because you have more and more people contributing to testing today, right? So you have developers writing the unit test. You have you writing end-to-end test and API test. Sometimes DevOps even writing some integration test. So there are many more and more tests in our organization. The problem is that all these tests are spread out, right? And many times we, more as a managers, we don't really know what we have or what we cover and who owns what, right? Reporting is all over the place, right? JUnit reports, we have some end-to-end reports and so on. So what Cloudbit helps you to do is helps you to centralize all your tests in one single place. You can connect different type of tests. For example, you can connect JUnit test with Oxygen tests, okay? And soon you will be able also to add .NET and Python technologies here. So it's centralized at you. Another thing is, let me show you maybe some more demo data. Another thing is that Cloudbit helps you to trace your testing. It helps you connect your test code to your ALM, to your requirements, to your stories and epics. Another thing, and it helps you also to manage your test labs, so you can connect your providers like South Labs and others and your local devices, and you can see all your devices in one place, which is very convenient. And when you are in CI process, one of big problems in CI is that in CI process you need to hard code usually your devices, your device IDs, especially if you are in mobile, like you usually would hard code it. And you know, if those devices are suddenly not available, your whole test fails. So Cloudbit helps you to overcome it. Okay, you just connect your devices to Cloudbit, and Cloudbit knows what's the right device ID to inject. So you don't deal with all this. Much easier to run the test. So basically, Cloudbit has different models. It has a test case models where you can map your code to actual requirement. It has a test result model where you can see your results here. Okay. Let me maybe run something which has more results. Okie dokie. Yeah. So for example, this would be a typical results report that we will see in Cloudbit. You will see a dashboard with summary of results. You see where we were testing it, which test cases were involved, and you can dive in and see a very detailed report, and you see how simple this report is. Those are business processes rather than the test code. And this is why all Cloudbit is all about. It's all about bringing different people in an organization together to understand what testing means and what test result means, and take it from technical level to more business level. Okay? The idea is at the end of the day we are testing because we want to give tools to managers to understand what impact would have a business if they need to release the software. Okay? And this is what Cloudbit helps you to do. Okay? So that's just quickly about Cloudbit. I will be happy to answer your questions about both. About Oxygen, I encourage you to go download it, try it out, write us. We are very responsive. We really like your feedback. Your feedback very important. So let's start the conversation. We can definitely help you overcome some issues, and we will help you to hear your experience or issues that you have with Oxygen. Thank you very much so far. I will just open my presentation on the last page. So my contact details. And questions?
Do you have any questions?
It was either incredibly unclear or incredibly clear.
So I heard that you mentioned C-Light in the beginning of the presentation. I might.
No, CLI I mentioned. But also C-Light, it's another Israeli startup. I really encourage you to try their tools. Okay? Basically, for those who know C-Light. Yeah, okay. You happy?
Well, it's I do like the code coverage piece. The rest is still They're
Yeah.
developing it, and I think I got it too soon, but
Right.
I'm still going to.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. How many of you, just my question from you, how many of you doing actively test automation? Okay, cool, cool. Okay, guys, so I want to thank our host today, South Labs, again. Thank you so much for doing your great community work.
And you? Can we get a
I was
round of
just
applause
around.
over here? Can we get a round of applause for
Thank you
Laura?
very much again, guys.